All right, we're preparing.
It's live at the top of my screen.
Yeah.
It's live at the top of my screen.
And
Action.
okay.
Okay, I'm going to reconvene the meeting, business portion of the meeting. Next on the agenda will be a pledge of allegiance and a moment of meditation. Please remember Carol Griffin, AIS teacher at SAS for 43 years.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the president's report. I'm going to update the community on the superintendent search. I'm going to do a little recap on the process first. Back in spring of 2020, the board started our search, and one of the most important tasks of any board is to hire a new superintendent. We recognized that and decided to hire a professional search firm to assist us in the process. We selected Strategic Educational Advantage. Subsequently, we working with SEA, we developed the process and timeline for our search. Next step was in August 3rd through September 15th. We conducted an online survey for all community members to participate in as we began developing the profile we would use in our search process. This survey received over 1,000 submissions. As we entered September, Strategic conducted interviews with individual board members about the characteristics they desired in the next superintendent. They also met with our GTA, our GAA, our CSEA, our PTOs, central office staff, directors, and our assistant superintendents. This day ended with the community Zoom meeting for all to participate in. Following this day and into October, Strategic analyzed the data collected and presented to the board a profile. The Board of Education accepted the profile and began to work with Maureen Farrell, our district clerk, thank you, and Christina Gore on advertising and posting of the position. Maureen and Christina did tremendous work for the board, and we thank you. Their work produced a digital brochure and a digital video for the candidates to view. Subsequently, the position was then opened in late October with a deadline date of around December 1st. In November, as applications came in, Strategic interviewed and vetted the candidates. We received 46 applications. 22 were sitting superintendents, and more than 28 had doctorates. As the application period closed, and after interviewing and vetting the candidates, Strategic made a presentation to our board of 9 candidates for consideration. The Board of Education accepted the 9 candidates. We then held in-person interviews, and after 2 long days of interviewing, we selected 3 candidates to advance as finalists. These 3 finalists were then asked to provide us with extensive materials electronically, including evaluations of staff, evaluations of themselves, writing samples, and a video. Earlier this month, we held in-person interviews with the 3 finalists. And following these interviews, we have selected our next superintendent of schools for the Goshen Central School District. On behalf of the Board of Education, I am pleased to announce that we have selected Dr. Curtis Coates as our next superintendent of schools. Welcome home, Curtis. Curtis is coming home after spending the past 2.5 years at Mount Pleasant School District in Westchester County. Prior to that, he was here for 6.5 years in the roles of high school principal and assistant superintendent. And now I'd like to add an addendum to tonight's agenda under the president's report of 5.2. Appointment of superintendent of schools. Need a motion? Tom? Mike? Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby appoints Curtis Coates as superintendent of schools of the Goshen Central School District for the period of time commencing on July 1st, 2021 and terminating on June 30th, 2026. And be it further resolved that the board hereby authorizes its president to execute an agreement with Mr. Coates, which sets forth the terms and conditions of his employment as superintendent of schools during the period from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2026, as presented to the board at this meeting. A copy of the agreement shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Congratulations, Curtis. Would you like to say a few words?
So, Jim, is it okay if I use my own device to log in? Mr. Bucci, Mr. Salty, members of the Board of Education.
I'm sorry, Chris, your audio is still not connected.
Sorry.
Good now? Mr. Pucci, Mrs. Salty, members of the Board of Education, thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be appointed as the next superintendent of schools for the Goshen Central School District. To the staff, families, and most importantly, the students of the community, please know how excited I am to assume this role, and I look forward to the opportunity to work together with all of you to help shape the future of this school district. As we together set our eyes on the work that lies ahead, it is unavoidable to not discuss the effect of the current health pandemic. As a global community, we stay hopeful and optimistic for the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine. As educators and as parents, we further ask ourselves about recovery and rebuilding. We need to move safely from an era of uncertainty and concern to proactive solutions that allow us to re-engage in our lives, where our children can return safely to learning environments that are nurturing, supportive, and fulfilling. I promise you that this will occur. Goshen is a strong and committed community dedicated to a school system that looks to open doors for a bright future for all students. But it is important that we look even further beyond the current crisis and reflect upon the true meaning and spirit of the education that should be provided for all children. I recently was with my niece who had purchased a new computer for herself, and inside the box was a card with a quote from Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple Computers. On the card was a quote that read, "The ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are usually the ones that do." In so many ways, this should reflect directly on the learning environment that we should look to create day in and day out through our schools. We need to support our teachers so that they can foster a passion for learning that makes children want to come running back to their classes every day. Together, we can recommit ourselves to reigniting a love of learning in our schools that will help sew together a fabric for our community of which we all want to belong. The academic, music, art, and athletic programs of this district provide opportunities for young people in this community that are strong. Together, we can make them stronger. So with great enthusiasm, I look forward to beginning my time as superintendent of schools in the Goshen Central School District. And as Steve Jobs said, I am crazy enough to think that I can change the world. Thank you, everyone. I'm honored to be here tonight, and I look forward to the future.
Right. Thank you, Curtis.
Good job. Great job.
Thank you, Curtis. See you soon.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Curtis. Lunch tomorrow. New guy. That's it.
I'm in.
It's our favorite project.
Thanks.
All right, Curtis.
Good night, Curtis. Thank you. Next on my report is a few more quick thank yous. First to the current administration, Superintendent Connor, and to his team and our staff here in Goshen. We were able to attract a very deep pool of candidates for our district for this position, and it really is a reflection of our current team. So thank you. I'd like to thank the board. We spent a lot of hours doing this, and I know it was some sacrifices, and I appreciate all your work on it. We have to thank the community, their survey, our stakeholders, meetings, really was able to provide the profile that we followed throughout this process. And Strategic Educational Advantage, Dr. Mike and Dr. Frank, we appreciate all their work, their advice. They did a good job for us in attracting the candidates. I already mentioned Maureen and Christina, but we'll do it again. Maureen, one of us likes hearing that. So thank you. So I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. President Pucci, if I could just jump in for a second. Just Eric, I'm getting messages from people in the community here that it's a stop, go, spinning, a lot of spinning, not real clear. So if there's some way we can, I don't know how it's going up the community, but it seems to be a problem. Okay.
But you can't unmute.
It's the internet.
Right. Well, you get on the everything. Yeah.
Continue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the financial update. The board acknowledges the treasury report for October 2020. And I think we have a presentation now. Superintendent Connor, you want to introduce?
Yes. Okay. Let me see if I mute myself, right? Good evening, everyone. We have joining us tonight our new Buildings and Grounds Assistant Superintendent, Jim Freeze. Jim recently conducted the visual inspection of facilities. So, Mr. Freeze, are you with us?
Yes, Dan, I'm here.
There he is.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for joining us, and I will turn it over to you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm going to talk to the board. Good evening, board members. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the AVI, or Annual Visual Inspection. In 2019, state law changed the building condition survey requirement to be on a 4-year staggered schedule for statewide districts, beginning in 2020 and ending in 2024, and then every 5 years from our assigned date. So Goshen is scheduled to complete a building condition survey in 2022. So our next building condition survey following that date would then be in 2027. Our previous one was 2015. That's the most recent. So to compensate for the additional length of time between surveys, districts are required to complete an annual visual inspection if a building condition survey is not performed by the end of years 2020 and 2022. So Goshen is required to complete an AVI by December 31st of 2020, with the results reported via our state portal by March 1st, 2021. So we completed our annual visual inspection on December 8th by our team consisting of myself and Frank Kowalczyk from Goshen and Joseph Russo from Orange Ulster BOCES, a certified state code official. Only normally occupied buildings were surveyed, and we looked at our 4 educational buildings and the Main Street. I believe the report prepared by Joe Russo was sent to you as part of tonight's board package. So I'll just say generally, the observations in that report fall into categories consisting of parking lot and asphalt repair, replacing aged and worn out interior finishes, meaning ceilings, walls, flooring, etc. Roof replacement at the Goshen Intermediate School. And he cautioned us about aging boilers and aging electrical panels that may need replacement in the future. So I thought I'd leave it at that and see if there are any questions.
It's a good report, Jim. There's a lot of information here. So I would hope that the board would have a chance, certainly tonight, a little bit of a sample and feedback from our Buildings and Grounds Assistant Superintendent. We can always bring Jim back if you have additional questions or things that you want him to explain further, but the guy was only on the job a month and he gets thrown right into this. So you did a great job, Jim. Thank you for your hard work with this.
Thank you, Dave. Much appreciated. Sure. Thank you, board.
All right, how about that? Double muted. Hi, James, how you doing? Just quick question. Will there be any numbers associated with those repairs? Would you be able to get that together? Right, however we get it, we should probably get an idea what that bottom line's gonna be. That'll all come out of that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Hold on. Jim, are we looking at a BCS report too? That'll be coming soon?
So our building condition survey will be performed in the year 2022. Next year, not this year.
The last time we got and I think it was through the BCS where we had them all non-itemized. Right.
1 through 4?
Number 1s were high priority, 5 wasn't.
Correct.
I believe.
Yes.
So that will come in the BCS.
Yes, along with the prices on each of those items. It'll be a lengthy report, I'm sure.
So there's visual inspection separate from the BCS,
Yes.
but useful to use towards the BCS, or is it the BCS a
Yes.
totally different inspection?
No, it'll be very useful.
Okay. I know.
Through this list and determine what can be done in-house. There are certainly some things on there.
That is something.
Done in-house.
Jim Freeze and I know, Jim, hopefully you're still on. I know that there are a number of these projects that you're already looking at with your Buildings and Grounds folks and what you'll attempt to do in-house. And I know that being a limited budget and all, there are some things that will absolutely make sense to do in-house, but other things are too big and would drive a lot of aid if we roll those into a small capital project. I'm saying $6, $7, $8 million. And you already got a good start toward a capital reserve now. I'm not exactly sure the dollar amount, but you're probably about halfway there. So, with a couple more years, depending on how fund balances are, and I'm not going to commit Louise to anything, but where we are at the end of each budget cycle and rolling that into capital reserves, that'll keep the tax levy down for sure. Our goal is to try and do capital projects or work on our buildings at zero impact to our tax rate. So we want to keep it flat. He's masked.
I think was it you, Jeremy, and Tom that were on the committee last time on the PCS?
Yeah.
I know you put in your notes that you get a little committee going.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys still good?
I thought that might be I know I'm on mute, but I thought that might be a good starting spot from here to move forward with this, with getting a committee of the board together and start looking at this.
Yeah.
Along with, involve the architect, start talking about the BCS plan that's going to happen within the next.
Okay.
Very good.
Any other questions? I gotta keep on checking Zoom here. I think we're good. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Next on the agenda is the legislative update. Martha?
Yes, there was no Orange County School Boards Association meeting this month. The next important activity is the February 3rd virtual meeting with our legislators. And I want to thank Maureen for sending it out to all of you, the invitation to join that meeting. It's February 3rd, and as I said, we will be able to dialogue with the legislators up in Albany. And all board members are invited, not just me, the legislative rep. Everyone is invited if they want to participate, and hopefully you will.
Great. Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Connor.
Thanks, President Pucci. I have a few things to report. First of all, our district superintendent has regular meetings, quarterly meetings with other superintendents around the state. Might even be more often than that, might be monthly meetings. But some of the things that they're talking about is the governor's proposed executive budget. He had his State of the Address today. He spoke about the budget. Not much said about education other than he was saying our governor was speaking to a $15+ billion deficit, and even with a 20% reduction in aid, that would only be $5.2 billion. At least a big gap on top of that. I'm not sure where this is all going. I think there's probably a look to Washington to get as much federal aid as we possibly can. We're certainly going to need that. Otherwise, not only just for Goshen, but for districts all across the state, maybe all across the country, where we're gonna have tough budgets and schools are going to slide backwards, and that's not good for kids. So, anyway, more to come on that. Also, our superintendent spoke to snow day pilot and how most of the schools around the state, and I'm glad that we hopped on that as well. We had a snow day for the kids, and that seemed to go over really well. There's other information regarding the CARES Act. At some point, I know that our school business official, Louise Lynch, has done a great job, along with Jay Carter, and keeping track of all of that information that goes into CARES Act. And hopefully much of what we've paid for out of pocket that were really unanticipated expenses, why that will come back to us through this CARES Act. So we're optimistic about that. We'll see though. Let's see what else. I do want to share with you that our middle school, with Principal Heather Carmen, proudly celebrated their induction of 75 eighth graders into the chapter this year. National Junior Honor Society chapter. So that's for the 2020 school year. Our two advisors are Mr. Rivera and Miss Hughes. And we want to express how proud they are of this group and their accomplishments. And you are making history, and you are marking our chapter history. So congratulations to all 75 of our students. And we thank our advisors and certainly our administration at the middle school for the great job they're doing there.
Dan?
Oh, Martha wants to happen. Yes, Martha?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the induction. I thought it was very nice. Obviously, whoops.
You're okay.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was very well done, and obviously a lot of work went into making up the induction packets and also the video that went along with it. And I thought it was very good. It was we didn't overlook something very special to a lot of children, students. And I did have one question I wanted to ask Dan back to the federal aid. As I recall, Goshen doesn't get an awful lot of federal aid. And do you think it will be handed out the way it has been in the past, or have you heard that it might be any different, Dan?
Yeah, I'm optimistic, Martha. I'm really thinking that, if in fact the federal government comes through with aid for our schools, I think it's going to be a sizable amount. And I think it'll definitely help in closing the gap. So, yeah, there's really good reason for it this year, if it's ever going to happen. So,
oh, absolutely.
I keep my fingers crossed, and I'm optimistic. As long as they're still talking about it at the table, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I know schools are not the only group certainly looking for money. There's hospitals and there's small businesses and so many other groups as well, and so deserving as well. But we'll see. I want to stay positive and hope for the best.
Yeah, would Louise know the dollar amount we got this year, or we are getting, or what we got last year, for example?
Do we know the dollar amount?
Yeah, because it's a real small amount, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I can certainly look into it. We'll get back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you bet. Also, too, I want to conclude my report by just, congratulating the board really on doing a great job with the search. And, I remember Curtis Coates when I first interviewed him for a high school principal's job here. And God, it seems like decades ago, and I think it was about 8.5 years ago. But Curtis was a rising star when he was a high school principal. It did not surprise me that he spent just a couple of years down here as an assistant superintendent, and that he was destined to be a superintendent for sure. And he comes back to the community, to the school, and he brings a lot of good things. Most importantly, the guy has always been on the front end or right at the cutting edge of technology. He's a bright guy. He's a fair individual. I'll tell you, he's a taskmaster. He's gonna do a great job leading this district. So I'm thrilled that he's coming back, and I look forward to seeing him certainly between now and the end of the year, and we'll spend some time together. But congratulations to Curtis Coates, and great job for the board. He's a great choice. Good reason to be excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. A couple of things that came up, Dan, with the Board of Ed email. I think we talked a little bit about facilities being open, not open during the winter months. I think we got an email we get emails on both sides of reopening and not reopening. A lot of people are afraid to go back, and a lot of people want to go back 5 days a week. We get emails on both sides almost weekly. I think we've been pretty consistent as a board and administrative team here that the first chance we get to go back, we will be going back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we have to follow the Department of Health and their guidelines.
Very true.
Now, I do think that when we can be open, even in a hybrid model, I think it's important for the community and the community members to have that option to go back and send their kids. Those who aren't comfortable, they can do remote. But I do think it is important to be open when we can be open.
Absolutely.
So I think we've been fairly consistent with that. I think we've been very consistent with that, actually. And I think that is still our goal. I think the board, I'll speak for the board. I don't care if it's for 5 days. If we get a chance to open 5 days a week for 5 days in June, I would do it. Just to get back in and start the reacclimation period for them, the fear of the unknown of going back. I think that's very, very important for us to strive for that.
Absolutely. Agree 100%. I think the majority of our staff would like to be back.
Yes.
They'd like to have the kids back.
So that is still our goal. That is still what we're focused on. And
Right.
when the chance we get, we will provide those opportunities.
Absolutely.
Next on the agenda is the Assistant Superintendent for Business Report, Louise Lynch.
Good evening. So before you tonight, you have a claims auditor report that I'm pleased to say has absolutely no errors on it. And we strive to do as well as we can there. And it's obviously a joint effort between several people in the business office and our claims auditor. Just to answer a couple of questions that came up tonight, there is about $300,000 that was earmarked to Goshen last year as a revenue. Martha, that was your question. I'll give you a more precise number, but it was around 300,000. And they called it something different, and it was listed on the state aid run last year when we got the second run from the governor late in the year. In addition to that, what Superintendent Connor mentioned was federal funding, which is known as FEMA. And I've not learned that there's a cap on that, but there's going to be many factors that will influence what we get and how much we'll get. And that's all the different agencies that are applying for those funds. And as we know, some people apply for funds that are very black and white and absolutely linked to COVID, and some are made a little more subjective. So I will keep you informed as we learn more about that. And hopefully, Goshen will get their due share, because it certainly has been an unprecedented year with funding that was unanticipated. And I just want to tie on to what Mr. Freeze and Superintendent Connor said about the AVI and a building condition survey. So we do have a good portion in the capital reserve, which is restricted to a capital project. So if we were to have a voter approved project there, we would be able to use those funds, and we would be able to get our 65% back in building aid as we incur the debt and send it out over a long period of time. But so I just wanted to make sure there's not the assumption that we can just fix some of those things and we can't tap into that money to fix things unless we have a voter approved project, but we do have some funding set aside for that. I don't know if there are any questions.
What is our current fund balance in capital reserve?
It's just under 4 million.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Martha? You just have to unmute.
Thank you. Yeah. Did I hear you correctly? All we get from the federal is 300,000?
Well, the 300,000 was the funding that was initially earmarked back in March of last year. And it appeared on our state aid run as a portion of the aid. And I think they called it pandemic relief or something like that. But so my understanding is those funds will be federal funds that will go through the state and distributed by the state. But that's not all there is. There is also the Fema Grant.
I haven't really thought a lot about federal aid probably for 4 or 5 years, but I know at one point didn't we get almost $1 million? And we used to target that for our AIS programs.
Well, that preceded me, but I have been in districts where you did get federal aid, and it's really, it's not common. It's very, it's very geared towards a very purpose, maybe a certain grant or, maybe there's a federal portion of property in a district. But in the last 3 years, there has not been any significant federal funds that have come from the federal government. We do have grants that are called federal grants, but that really is state money, and it's filtered probably from the federal government through the state, and that's title and the IDEA grants. But there hasn't been any significant money that I'm aware of in the last 3 years. But I want to be clear, the 300,000 is what we spoke about last year at budget time. FEMA is the grant where, to my knowledge, it's not really limited until they reject or accept it. And that's what I'll keep you apprised of.
And now, whoever makes the decision, the federal government or the state, they base it on what?
My understanding is they're basing it on how you are defending the expenditures and how they are linked to this pandemic.
Well, I kind of meant the non-pandemic federal aid, but maybe there isn't anything other than what you're describing now.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything unless it's specifically linked to COVID, and it's the FEMA stands for the Federal Emergency Management. It's perceived as a disaster, as if we were to have a flood or something like that, where the federal government would come in and provide assistance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, and I will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, Personnel, and Technology report, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Pucci. Good evening, everyone. One quick item for you this evening. We are currently in the process of completing the NAM Foundation Best Communities for Music Education Survey. As you might recall, we do this every year, and we have been given the designation as a Best Community for Music Education the 3 previous school years. This is quite an extensive application. It is due on January 31st. There are many questions pertaining to funding throughout the district for K-12 comprehensive music programs, opportunities for students. It is standards-based to a degree, speaks of community involvement, also asks questions about our music facilities available to children K-12. And essentially what they're trying to see is how all these factors affect the quality of the music program that is made available to our students here in district. As you are well aware, we have a phenomenal music program here amongst many other things in Goshen. I am very hopeful that we will again receive this designation, and once again that will be submitted prior to January 31st. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Need a motion? Judy and Martha? Be resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools. The Board of Education approves the consent agenda as presented. All in favor? Opposed? There is no old business. Move on to new business, 14.1. I need a motion to approve minutes for regular meeting and special meeting. Mike? Tom? Be resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the minutes for this December 21st, 2020 regular board meeting and January 2nd, 2021 special board meeting. All in favor? Opposed? 14.2. Need a motion for approval of lead evaluator for teachers certifications. Judy? And Mike? Be resolved that pursuant to the requirements of Education Law, Section 3012-D, in Part 30-2.9 of the Regents Rules, the following person has completed all the required training to be recertified by this Board of Education as lead evaluators for classroom teachers. Alyssa Marino. All in favor? Opposed? 14.3. Need a motion to approve correction of assessment due to small claims assessment review. Jeremy and Tom? Be resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education accepts the assessment corrections as specified by the Orange County Supreme and County Courts as summarized, and to direct the tax collector to take the necessary actions in accordance with small claims assessment review for Richard Florio, Chester, Section Block 6-1-49.21 in the amount of $1,000.61 for the tax year 2020-21. All in favor? Opposed? 14.4, a motion to ratify appointment for an impartial hearing officer. Allison and Martha. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education ratifies the appointment of impartial hearing officer Jeannie Keefe, Esquire, for file number 011121. Compensation will be made at the hourly rates currently approved by the State Education Department pursuant to 200.21 of the regulations of the Commissioner. All in favor? Opposed? Next on the agenda, board member issues. Tom?
Oh, thank you. I just want to say to everybody, we all put in the time for the superintendent search, but Jason, I just want to say you did a great job. You put in more time than anybody, and we all got phone calls and emails all the time. And I just want to say thank you, and I'm sure everybody feels the same way.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
So you got my email.
Next on the agenda is an executive session with the intent not to reconvene. I need a motion. Judy and Tom? Be resolved, the Board of Education will enter into executive session with the intent not to reconvene the business portion of the meeting for the review of employment history of particular persons and negotiations. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Good night, everybody.